Donovan Mitchell, this was back when he was in Utah, but he had it was like a Utah Jazz mini camp. You see them fail, then you see them learn from the mistake or the failure per se, throwing different variables to have you process and make reads, fade screens, pin downs. So I had to really collaborate with coaches, understanding their playing style.
Welcome to the NBA 2K G League show. I am your host, Chari, and welcome to the show. So we have episode 2 of a summer series today. Got a special guest, my good friend, O'Neal Lubin. He's a basketball trainer, a former head coach. Has been also a former player. He's played, with some guys in high school who were some top players back in the day. And, he's got to coach some top players also who are in high school. He actually coached at Oak Ridge High School, which is one of the top high schools in Florida. And so, he's then transitioned to becoming a trainer. And, he's got to work with a lot of great professional athletes. So I'm really excited I get to have him today. So let's just get straight into it. So welcome back to the NBA 2K G League show. I'm here with O'Neal Lubin. O'Neal, thank you for coming on to the show. I'm super excited to have you. So yeah, this is going to be a good interview. So I think the first question I'm just going to kind of ask, I always like to ask any of my guests is, what made you just fall in love with basketball?
Well, Varun, I want to say thanks for having me on. And what made me just fall in love with basketball was just seeing the movements of, watching Allen Iverson play, how small he was, but how he moved on the floor, how he went dribbled from one end to another, just weaving through traffic, finishing amongst the bigs, and just there's just a reaction and how, every time he made a shot, everyone gathered towards him. The crowd would go crazy. So I remember just watching and just Allen Iverson, and that made me just fall in love with the game. And just somebody so small and somebody just carrying a huge load and just overcoming. So that's what made me just fall for the game, and then me trying to emulate the things Allen Iverson did, just as far as dribble patterns and extending body, contorting it, covering space, finishing up and unders. So that's what made me really fall for the game. And he was one of the players that made me fascinated about the game.
I think that's very awesome. I think Allen Iverson is one of the best too. So it's I think it's really cool to hear about that. I actually didn't know about that with you. So that's really cool. So I think even based on your response and with being a basketball trainer, a lot about the game. It seems like a lot about the physics and what the different effects of what it does. I think I want to first kind of get into your journey a little bit about how you got into being a trainer. So I was just curious if you just want to talk about how you became a basketball trainer and just what that's been like so far in your career.
Yeah, so pretty much training was a part of the equation, but it wasn't my main goal. I just thought it was something that I needed to know as far as to be a part of the game. When I was in college, my junior year in college, I was at Warner University. One of my teachers, Mr. Campbell, he was my history teacher. He was like, "Hey, I got a nephew. Can you, train him in basketball, keep him out of trouble?" So every Wednesdays, I would train these kids, Khalil and I'm looking right at him, Khalil and Jack, but Jay is Jay actually. So every Wednesday I would get paid for it, but that was just a hobby. And then once I graduated college, it just led to, me being ready for, coaching. And I was coaching freshman year. And then my following year after that, I was the head basketball coach at the high school. But then once I stopped coaching, once that year was over with, I was an interim coach. And then this administration decided to go another direction. So I stopped coaching. So one of my best friends, Caddy, he got drafted by the San Antonio Spurs. We were,
This is Caddy Lane?
Yes, sir. Yeah, Caddy Lane. So he's my childhood friend, known him since elementary. We played basketball together throughout middle school and high school. But once I finished coaching, and once that stint of coaching was over with, Caddy came and presented to me. He was like, "Hey, man, you pretty much know all the things that these coaches where I'm overseas or he was in a G League at the time, he was like, you pretty much know similar things. Why don't you train me? And then that was how everything started. So Caddy kind of softball pitched it, and I kind of just, you know what I mean, I knocked it out the park. I hit a home run, and pretty much one thing led to another, like me being able to communicate with the different types of players, being the fact that I was a player. I played high level AAU ball and high level, not well, mid level college ball. However, finishing it really made me aware of like the types of players because like I said, Caddy was one of my teammates and he was a top 50 kid. Then I had other teammates, that was number one in their position. Fab Melo, rest in peace, but he was number one in his position. And however, I was able to take the elite perspective and able to take the not so elite perspective. And I was able to combine it as far as playing. Then I was able to come back and coach it. Then I was able to come back and train it. So I was a player, coach, trainer. So these different perspectives or the hats really made me become a trainer. And if it wasn't for Caddy, I wouldn't have known like this was a path.
Shout out Caddy, man. No, that's awesome. That truly is awesome. Wow. No, I think it's cool when you have people around you who do what you're taught about, like soft pitching idea to you, and you kind of start to think about, but then you really get more into it, and then you become something that you really enjoy doing. So I think that's awesome to hear that. I think something you also really talked about. You had experience as being a coach, but then being a trainer. I think there's something I'd say with collaboration. I think that's important in not only like the basketball industry, but a lot of industries. Can you talk about the collaboration side of being a trainer and working with players, maybe working with maybe just some of the coaching staffs, like how that kind of works as a trainer?
Yeah, so the collaboration piece is huge because you don't want like the entire summer caddies, like for instance, let's use caddy or let's use a middle schooler. I had a middle schooler transition into high school, Lainey Dodd. There's a specific way her coach played. They were more of a fast-paced team. They weren't really running much more sets. So pretty much I had to get to know what type of playing style what the coach had, so I can implement these concepts into our trainings. Because we can work on your dribble pull up, but if you don't know when to apply the dribble pull up or when to apply the in and out crossover or when to apply the passing hook pass or bounce pass, it makes no sense as far as like how everything plays a role with the coach or how the game will be played. So I have to really collaborate with coaches, understanding their playing style, understanding what they're looking for the athlete to get within the offense. So then these are concepts that I can bring to training sessions and obviously add different variables as far as like different types of game scenarios where it can be game transferred. And that's something that I'm big on, especially like, hey, what are we doing to translate in the game? So I had to understand the coach's outline for the player, so I'll be able to implement training concepts, different variabilities, different reads, so that then the athlete would know when to apply certain moves, and then they can be more successful when it comes to the game because we're all saying the same exact thing. It's not like a tug of war. It's more, hey, we're bringing more to the table for the athlete to be the best version of themselves. So I think the collaboration between coach and trainer is huge, or trainer has to understand what the coach is doing. So even though they're not bending the minds together, at least if they can grasp what the coach is trying to do, and they can still teach underneath that umbrella.
Yeah, I think you speak beautifully about the collaboration there, and yeah, I think too the important thing is when it comes to, because you know a lot about the movements, about in a way it feels like the physics of how everything kind of works together. But where did that knowledge kind of come from? Was that just from basketball at such a young age? Like, how did you kind of learn more about this? Like, was it a lot of, did you have to go to camps or like courses to kind of learn about being a trainer? Like, I know you've talked a little bit about you've also worked with Miami Hoop School. So I was curious about like the process of how you also learned more about training athletes.
Yeah, so and Miami Hoop School is pretty much a group of trainers that's based out of Miami, and pretty much they run an elite skill acquisition facilities, and they host camps, clinics, but they do a lot of training. And throughout the summer, they're training a lot of the pros that come out of Miami, a lot of the guys that's in college and high school, like top tier players. They're in Miami for Miami Hoop School to get better, open runs. It's just a ton of NBA pros that's trying to get contracts, guys that's in the that just entered the NBA draft. They're coming there for pre-draft workouts. High schoolers are competing against the pre-draft workout guys. You got current NBA guys out there training just to, sharpen up their skills. I mean, it's loaded with probably like 50 plus NBA players in and out, NBA draft players in and out, high school elite players in and out. So it's just a high level training umbrella. And then it's ran by Andrew Moran, and he's running a great ship there. And then he's also, I think, the head coach at Miami Columbus, and they're like four-time state champions, and they won. He coached the Nike EYBL, won it 3 years in a row. So he's good, the coaching component and also the training component. He opened up his doors and taught me many of the things that I know as far as training and how to construct and structure and how to, basically deal with the athletes, because athletes, you got this, they speak a different language, they move around their days differently. So he was able to like specify and narrow my search on what I needed to be doing. So a huge shout out to him and what he's doing with Miami Hoop School. The physics is huge. I had to I had to reteach myself pretty much everything about the whole basketball, like how, we're talking about Allen Iverson, how he's able to contort his body and get low to the ground and create these different angles, shin angles, and different ways to stay balanced, and how, so that the physics part just came back to me, like relearning the game, and also like being around, like learning training per se, different angles, staying low, being loaded, keeping your hips loaded, understanding where your power is generating from, understanding different types of movements on the floor, how to flow within the floor of the game. So he's really good at just teaching you where you're gonna get your spots, how to get to your spots, how to be more efficient, when to burst, when not to burst. And so he's good at just acceleration, deceleration, pivoting, balance. And then he's really good with the IQ of the game. He's constantly like throwing different variables to have you process and make reads. So that's something I learned from, Andrew Moran out in Miami Hoop School, who does a great job. But the physics of the game came from me just relearning how does these players able to move their body, able to perform or stay conditioned the way they are. Then I'm understanding like, wow, everything starts from the ground up. Then you're starting to see like, then I start to see like a different pattern amongst like the elite athletes. The physics they understand, or their body unconsciously performs this way. So the physics of the body is huge. The anatomy of the body is huge. How everything responds, the energy forces, the balance, all of that stuff plays a big part. So that's why you see a ton of athletes. They understand more about physics than anything, and if they don't know, then they're just naturally gifted. So that's what I got to understand. Like some guys, they don't even know about physics, but they just know how to do it. But then you have the guys that can just break down like, hey, this shin angle, or hey, this angle on your release form, or how the energy transfers from your feet to your fingertips. Is like, that's huge, the energy transfer. So how do you maintain it? How do you continue repeating it? And how do you continue performing at these peak levels? And there's a lot of physics. Lastly, just to answer that question, like, and I went to a ton of like USA clinics, USA basketball clinics, and they have a ton of like, you know, speakers, footnote speakers, and they're just talking about what's the main thing that they're focused on within their program. And then you'll see like the physics piece was huge. And that's something that's not highlighted on a natural scale. It's not, you don't really understand it until you really deep dive into it.
For sure. I think that is a very interesting, way of explaining it, because I think that is something that, we don't really think too much about, but I think it's a lot of athletes have to have that information in mind. Like, I remember there was this clip of how I think LeBron James was like breaking down a play, and it was like from memory, like play by play, and I was like, wow, it was so impressive. So yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. And I wonder, something that I've kind of thought about is, there's players in the game where they might, maybe like they need to work on, say, their 3-point shooting, versus maybe there's players who are more in the post. Is there like a philosophy of you should try to work on every aspect of your game if you're in the NBA or the G League college? Like, if your game is more of like you play as a big man, you're more in the post, versus, or maybe you should be working on your ball handling, your passing, your 3-point shooting. Or because I wonder if like they have a limited amount of time, when you do have a certain amount of time, do you continue to work on that one area that you're really strong at and continue to keep staying consistent, or do you want to continue to keep expanding, and working on different parts of your game? I guess that's something I'm curious, like as a trainer, like what your philosophy might be, and I'm sure that depends on the player and the coaching as well.
Yeah, I understand the question, and I think it goes back to like a couple things. What type of offense they're in, how they're being utilized within their offense. And once you understand that utilization, say some coaches, there might be upside. If you're playing in FIBA, you probably just, hey, set screens, you stay in this mid post area or this block or this dunker spot, and that's it. Like some guys, that's how they're coached. However, if you have a little more freedom, then I think that you can sprinkle in a little more. However, even if it is you're just boxed in on a block, I think once, if you're on the right block, you want to add different variations of, hey, what can happen? Hey, once we do a drop step hook shot, now we're going to do a drop step reverse pivot into a pass. So now you're just having counters after counters. So even if they're restricted on movement or where they're at on the floor, if they're just on a block, 5 feet away from the basket, and that's where they're at predominantly during the game, you can throw many variations, many variables, many counter reads that they have to make. So with me, it's all about processing. Just like you mentioned something about LeBron James, he's able to process play by play and be able to tell you what read, what cut, what a defender needs to be. So, however, if you're in that posted area, all right, you're gonna have a double team coming from the nail, from the top of the key. Okay, this is what we're gonna work on. Now we're gonna work on a double team coming from the baseline. Now you're going to work on countering this move. Now they're just going to play they're just walling you up and they're playing just one man on man, 1v1. Now this is what we're going to look to attack on. Now, as you're about to attack, here's another variation. So it's constantly throwing different reads at the player to see how do they process. It's more about, can you process these game situations? Because in a game, once you catch it in this right post, this may happen, this may happen, this may happen. Are you quick enough to make the right read? And are you quick enough to make the right read? So pretty much I will have to see. I think it does tailor with what type of player you have. I think you want to sprinkle, some facets of like, hey, pick and pop. Hey, pick and roll. This is you playing out the short roll, especially if they're big, because a lot of the times they're picking and rolling, they're picking and popping, or they're in that that shallow area as they're rolling. So they have to make decisions off if they should be aggressive at the rim or should they be able to see where the double team is creeping and make that pass. So it just depends on what type of player. However, despite the player, you always want to throw, you know, processing and reacting and decision making in it, despite the type of player you're dealing with. That's something I think it has to be consistent.
When you have to train these athletes who might be traveling and you might not be able to see them in person, I guess when you're looking at, full game replays, and then you're also looking at versus going in person, does it is having more accessibility of being in person to be able to see that the players you're training in their full games? I would imagine that's probably helps make it like much easier. Because I guess I'm wondering is how do you navigate if say a player's overseas and you can't really go to their games. How do you kind of like work with that as you're like as a that because as an obstacle is you can't then be there in person. So I guess I'm wondering like how as a trainer you work with these obstacles of players not being in person in front of you every single day, and having to navigate that.
I mean, accessibility is huge, like you just mentioned. But right now, we're in a different day. This is not the early 90s or early 2000s. Now, if you're not there, you can still be there. If you're not there physically, then virtually is a huge aspect. So, for instance, I had, one of the players I trained, he's overseas and he's having, he had 5 to 10 games. I was able to watch 6 of his games. And then I was able, because they had 10 games, but 6 I was able to actually watch. So I was able to break down and make clips and be able to do voiceovers and annotations and being able to like show, hey, these are good defensive possessions. Hey, these are good offensive possessions. Hey, look for this more. Hey, work on spinning baseline, shoot over your left shoulder, initiate contact with your inside shoulder. Attack this back foot or the front foot. So I'm able to still coach and to be fair with you, it's probably a little better this way because most of the athletes, they're visual learners. So I'm able to pinpoint, make, 30, 45-second clips, and then I can make an actual 5-minute video that they can see, good clips, bad clips, adjustments, things that they can do better at. So pretty much it's coaching virtually and just giving them, hey, this is what I saw. And I have my coach's lens on. So now it's just being there virtually and via Zoom or via FaceTime. And that's one of the biggest things right now as far as overseas players not being accessible. And then I'm able to watch the games while they're happening in real time or catch the game right afterwards. And then once I talk to my client and I'm able to say, hey, in the third quarter, this will happen. And they're more blown away. Like, hey, you watched the game? Like, yeah, I was not there, but I watched the game. So I'm more like accessibility is huge. However, like we're in a day and age where everything's digital and virtually, like you're able to get the same exact thing done and probably a more efficient time.
Talking a little bit about the G League here, when you're training guys who are in a G League, what is that process like? Because I imagine they're also probably busier during the actual season, and so I think you'd probably be training them more when they kind of come home, and like when they're back in the area, you like more likely is it probably like close to after the season, so like April, May, June, and they probably prepare for summer league. Am I getting this right?
That's pretty much the timeline. So pretty much most of those guys, they're trying to gear up and try to make summer league rosters, try to get call ups to training camp. So pretty much that whole summer, as far as gearing up, you're watching a ton of film. However, you're trying to see what can they do to expand their game. If they're, because you want to be good at many things, but in the NBA, it's more of like, what do you do? Are you a 3-point shooter? Are you a catch and shoot guy? Are you a screener? Are you good in the short roll? So pretty much you want, like, if you're a short roll guy, if you know certain teams need you to be a good decision maker in a short roll, that's something that we're going to work on rather than you shooting a pick and pop three, because they need, so we'll do that. However, we're going to have more emphasis on, hey, you out of the short roll, you're making short roll reads. You seeing where the help side is creeping at. If there's coming from the corner, hey, deliver to the corner. If they're not there, you attack the rim. If it's here, you do that drop down. Different type of reads. So pretty much you just seeing what needs to be done as far as to make sure if they play or try out for any team or when they're playing in the summer league, this is what this player does well. This is what they do. So pretty much don't do things that's unnecessary. We don't want to do too much ball handling because in the game, we have a point guard that's doing that. If you're big, you don't need to do that ball handling. However, you got to know how to get to your spots. You got to see how to make these certain reads, how to process the defense and break it down properly to make the proper pass or make the proper drive, know when to drive, when not to attack. So that's pretty much a predicate is like, what can we show that we're good at?
I think that's huge because as these guys start to go into, they're trying to get like a training camp deal, and I guess when they do end up signing that training camp deal for some of those players, or they're on a two-way contract, they probably then end up relocating to a different city. Are you still really in contact with them, or are they more than spending more time with the coaching staff and the team, and like I guess at the practice facility? Like I guess is your job then as a trainer still really as active when they're with a NBA or maybe like the G League team?
So pretty much it's a weird situation. It depends on like the player. However, when they're there, I can still send feedback because they know like where it's not coming from the wrong place. However, you don't want to give them too many, like for myself, like I don't like to I don't want to be too much when you already got your ear. So when the coaches already have your ear. So pretty much I'll probably send, hey, this, you should have done this. Or if they're looking for more feedback, like, and they initiate, hey, I want more breakdowns from you, or I want you to stay, then I'm like, okay, I can be more hands-on. But pretty much once they go, they're kind of out my way. Then once summertime comes, then we get right back in contact, and then we just kind of build from there. It's no like hard loss or hard feelings towards anything. It's more of like, hey, we just pick off where we left off, and pretty much they get busy within their day. They might have a different time zone. Different schedule conflicts may happen. However, I will send a clip here and there, but not trying to do too much. And then they always kind of come back and they always keep in contact. They might like something on social media, and that just kind of shows like, they kind of shows like, hey, they're still the relationship is still there. However, like I kind of let it be once they venture out to the league, and then they'll come back once they initiate any contact. So, I just kind of like, back just a bit and just support from a distance.
When you have a lot of people, it's a lot of information. So I totally understand where you're coming from. I think, we just talked a little bit about how important Summer League is, but I guess with big events like maybe Summer League, maybe like showcase events, how is there really like a big importance, I'd imagine, for like basketball trainers in terms of networking and kind of getting out and meeting other people? Like, could you maybe just talk about like networking in the industry for training athletes?
Yeah, I think the networking piece is huge, and I think summertime for trainers is huge networking piece. Like I mentioned, it's summertime before like training camps and that June, July, August, September time. Those 4 months are huge for trainers because it's the players off season. Their off seasons are on season. And then, like, for instance, I learned a ton from Andrew when I was just in Miami for a week. And it was just tons of trainers there, tons of people that they're college guys tons of guys that's been doing training internationally for years, and it's just a community of guys that's try to help these athletes be the best athlete that they can be by simplifying, by showing, demonstrating, and taking out or adding things to their game. And it's like, so these opportunities is from like summer league. You see similar faces from the guys that I met in Miami Hoop School. They're out in summer league. And I'm watching games supporting them. We're all supporting the same guy, not even knowing that we all had encounters with this athlete. And it's like different times, but it's the same exact goal. Is like get the player better, try to get them a contract, and try to be able to make them serviceable in this league. So I think summer league is a big deal for athletes. I mean for trainers. The pre-draft workouts. If you can find someone that was, gracious enough, like Andrew Moran, to open up their doors to teach and show, like, hey, this is what's happening. That's a huge networking opportunity as well. And then back in Orlando, I was training a ton of international players, 20 plus in and out. Then I was able to open up doors for others to see, hey, this is what's going on. So pretty much it becomes one of those things like once someone does it for you, you kind of do it for others, and you want these trainers to excel. You want the players to excel. So it's like a community of just building up. So that I feel like is necessary because you do make an impact, and it's also a big community where you can help thrive at, and it's all networking. Like I just transitioned to the East Coast, and it's the same type of same deals, and it's like you see similar faces, and it's all from networking from these basketball events. And yeah, so summer league, I would say, coaching clinics throughout the summer. I would even say sometimes even on the AAU circuit, whether not EYBL or Adidas 3SB. So it's like, yeah, it's just one of those things. It's all networking, especially training and coaching. I think that like summer leagues and pre-draft workouts are one of the biggest. Like it's Christmas for trainers or
I think
holidays.
it's
And if you don't celebrate Christmas.
I think it's interesting too. You talked about like you see a player that you all might have trained, and even if you're not like in person together, you can still root for them like from afar. So like I remember, I think did you say you had trained? Was it Jaleel Okafor like at hoop school? Like
Yeah.
you all had trained.
He was one of the guys that was Jaleel Okafor, Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell, this was back when he was in Utah, but he had it was like a Utah Jazz mini camp. Royceo'neal, Donovan Mitchell. So pretty much there's a ton of guys that you're working out. And I'm not saying I have a relationship with these guys. I'm saying I was there training these guys, learning from, and being able to, to really encounter and learn from these workouts. But not a one-time thing. They were there 4 or 5 days out the week. So I was able to be there throughout the week with these guys. And it was really one of those experiences I'm never going to forget. So, yeah, I mean, awesome, because you don't get that type of experience just out of nowhere. And it was pretty cool to see them process, learn. You see them fail, then you see them like learn from the mistake or the failure per se. Then like you see the growth happening like in real time, and it's happening as you go. You can see the frustrations. You can see when they're grabbing the concept. So like being able to highlight the growth is something that you won't be able to, it's something that you don't see. So I gained a ton from that.
Well, you talked about the pre-draft process. I imagine you get a lot of players are getting feedback from teams during that. I guess, like when you were maybe with Miami Hoop School and you all had seen like players who were going into the draft. Is that kind of similar to what we were talking about with this similar like collaboration process of, you're getting feedback, and then I guess how's like a trainer, how do you address that feedback that you get from these NBA teams and like for the players who are going into the draft process? And because I'm sure they're getting I guess I wonder like if every NBA team is telling them like different things, and you have to then start to navigate. Okay, what makes the most sense, or if it maybe is the most consistent thing, then you just kind of continue to work on that.
So per se, like when I was there at with just in Miami, I wasn't the one that was running it. I was more of the student learning. However, Andrew, that was running the whole thing, he was able to, he already had everything tailored for the player. If, for instance, the pre-draft workout, the work, if you're a guard, if you were a point guard, if you were a shooting guard, if you were, Tim Hardaway, then it'll be different when Tim Hardaway Jr. came in because now these pre-draft workouts, they're not selected on a team. These guys are just, moving freely. Now he was able to construct workouts. Hey, this is what every guard in the league needs to be able to do. This is what every shooting guard needs to be able to do. Then if Tim Hardaway Jr. came in, he was already on a specific team. He had his role. So the workouts will be constructed completely different, but he will make sure like certain components got checked off the box. And then they specified, all right, this is how the Dallas Mavericks played. This is your role within the Dallas Mavericks. This is what we're going to be. We're going to do a lot of ghost screens. We're going to do a lot of, a lot of pin downs. We're going to do some little bit of floppy action, whatever, just to see you coming off, double staggers, you faking the screen and relocating. And then rather than if you're playing for the Orlando Magic, you're just going to be in the corner, just waiting to spot up. And so the roles differ. So the pre-draft workout, it was more like, hey, every guard needs to have this type of skill set. Every center needs to have this type of footwork. Every power forward needs to have some ball handling skills. And because everybody's is a point forward now, you know what I mean? And so pretty much, I think it differs from the pre-draft workouts, the pre-draft guys rather than guys that's already on the roster because the roles are different. And then there's certain things that certain players need to display. Like if you didn't shoot well in the, NCAA and your three-point percentage, then we'll work more on three-point shots, shot making, different type of footwork, coming off, relocating to the corner, drifting up, fade screens, pin downs. So pretty much like showing different variations of you shooting the ball at a high clip, not just you standing up, catching and shooting, but showing unique footwork to get to your shot.
I think that's very well said and very insightful. So I just got to ask some quick, I guess, lightning round questions. So first question I'm just going to ask is, have you ever played NBA 2K? And if so, who's your like go-to player or team in 2K?
Yeah, I played 2K. I had to get rid of 2K because I was spending so much time on them playing. But actually, I was spending a lot of time on 2K, dude. But the team I play with, this is probably generic and it probably be okay. But one team I love, OKC Thunder. It's just I know how to work Shea Gilgeous. In some reason, he just reminds me of a taller version of Allen Iverson. So it's just so it reminds me of back of 2K when I used to play as a kid. And with Allen Iverson, like when he was playing for Philadelphia, then even when he was playing for Denver Nuggets, he was still able to move. So yes, I played with Shea Gilgeous in 2K.
Have you ever done like ever play with Allen Iverson versus like Shea and ever seen like what that could even? I mean, I don't even know what that'd be like. I've never seen that.
I never even thought about it, but that would be pretty cool. But I think Shea, just with his length, would get him. Yes, he's because you forget he's 6'6". Allen Iverson was 6'1" on a good day. That's with the capsule.
No, for sure. And then the second quick question I was going to ask is, do you have like I guess a favorite, like maybe like a favorite player that you trained that maybe, or like just a favorite story of like a time you were training somebody that you could share?
There's a few. I would say uh caddy for sure. Like that's just like that's someone that I can't just breeze. But it's like just seeing caddy's development. Just I want I don't want to be biased. I'm just trying to think like maybe I shouldn't say caddy. I would say yeah, I would say caddy just because there's times when you can see the translation from each workout and then you'll see it correlate. Like for instance, last summer, Caddy was playing in the Big Three, and before the Big Three started, like he just finished out a season. He was just like he was still just recovering. But then when we were training, you would see like from game one, you can see he was still rusty. Then as each workout just went on, you would see the translation in his game on the Big Three because every game was on the weekend. So throughout the week, we would knock out four workouts. You know what I mean? Then he'll travel that Friday, have a game Saturday or Sunday. So we're able to see everything happen in real time, not just by playing pickup, but on a main stage, like him competing in an arena and being able to see the things that we were working on translating. That was so satisfying. Like, because week one and then by week 15, he was on another level and our workouts increased. We shook off the rust. It was like we were back at square one, but being able to see everything happen like in real time, seeing like the different types of workouts because the Big Three, now you're playing 3-on-3 ball. Now it's more reading and processing, seeing where your defenders at, seeing where to space out at. So it's more of a thinking game. And so we were able to put a lot of that into our workouts. So it was satisfying to see him like excel at this pace that we're moving at, and it was pretty cool to see because I'm like, this is a different landscape, different type of basketball. You're in an arena. There's a little bit of pressure on you. So being able to see him do things, hit game winners, be a contributor with his team, and being able to see the work that we're putting in. We're working late hours. I will have a basketball camp throughout the day, then we'll work out at night, then like we'll keep it up and we're consistent. But being able to see it was satisfying. Just that was the most last summer.
I remember you telling me about this last summer, and I remember I'd call you on the phone. You're like, "Yeah, I just got out of a workout," and it's like almost like it's pretty late at night too. And I'm like, "That's awesome!" Like I love that y'all are like just continue to get after it. So yeah, I think the last question of this lightning round is I always like to ask people this for fun. Do you have a favorite movie, TV show that you've watched, whether it's basketball or outside of basketball, that you really enjoy?
Favorite movie from 2025 or
Anything like yeah, without I guess during your lifetime, anything that comes up.
yeah, lifetime. I guess as of truth be told, I just watched Space Jam, the original Space Jam, and that's like the combination of like the best sports athletes and then a combination of like favorite cartoons, that there's a different type of nostalgia feel. I feel like it's a documentary of Michael Jordan. So anyways, I would say Space Jam, like because there's so many different things I'm fascinated about with Space Jam. Not only that it makes me go back to my childhood, not only that it makes me understand the game of basketball a little more, and it's like tailored from like the different type of entertainment fields with the Looney Tunes and the entertainment with the National Basketball Association, and combining the two is just, it brings me back to a different place. And so I put original Space Jam favorite movie. I think is I didn't even watch Space Jam 2. I couldn't watch the second Space Jam with LeBron. It's just till this day, it's like I'm too much of a Space Jam guy. So I would say Space Jam is my favorite movie of all time.
And I think that's very interesting. You were actually talking a little bit about like in a way of a documentary. I never thought about it that way, but I think that's a really good point because you kind of see this was a time when Michael Jordan was still in his career and he had just retired. I think you see the life events of what Michael Jordan was going through, and I think that's actually like a very interesting point. And I feel like too like I know there's like the idea of combining like two very different things and then making it work, I think is so creative. Like we see like even with like Lilo and Stitch. I know that's been like trending a lot, like aliens, Hawaii, Elvis, like so I think in a way like Space Jam, like basketball, Looney
Wow.
Tunes.
Yeah, that's a
So
good point. Wow. Yes. Because it is kind of the same. Wow. That is. The entertainer here is Elvis instead of Michael Jordan. The
mhm.
aliens still come and invade, not Chicago, not the NBA, but Hawaii. And like you build these two different dynamics. And yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, for sure. But O'Neal, man, we could talk about this training for like hours. This was awesome. Like I learned so much. This was a great interview. So thank you for coming on, man. This was really great.
No, I appreciate you, Varun. And this was awesome. Just like anytime.
Yeah, man. I said I continue to say like why I want to do this summer series of interviews. Like people like you who like do work with players in the G League and around the NBA. Like it's so important, and so to be able to have guys like you, like it's just huge. So again, thank you so much, and yeah, just really excited to continue to see your journey, man.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, Varun.